My 18-year-old son whispered to me, "Mommy, Daddy has a lover, and they're going to take all your money." His voice shook like he was holding back a storm, stronger than any warning I'd ever heard. "Mommy, Daddy has a lover, and when you go on that business trip, he's planning to drain everything you've got." Emily Thompson was 42 years old, with a steady gaze that hid a quick wit. From the outside, her life looked solid. A cozy home in a leafy Chicago suburb, always filled with the hum of daily routines. She ran her own marketing firm remotely, a flexible, high-stakes gig that let her balance big client pitches with time for her son. That evening, Emily had just wrapped up a strategy deck for a major conference in Boston. Her flight was booked for early Tuesday. She was sorting outfits in her closet while her son lounged nearby, scrolling on his phone. He was a sharp, thoughtful teen whose smarts often surprised his community college professors. Emily tucked a blazer into her bag and called out, "Hey, remember you're staying with Dad while I'm gone. Just a couple nights." He paused mid-scroll, slipped his earbuds back in, and said nothing. Emily noticed the strange silence but brushed it off as typical teen mood swings. Kids hated when plans changed. Later, already in sweats and heading to bed, he stopped at her door. He asked if she could sit with him for a minute. He leaned against her shoulder, quiet for what felt like forever, until his next words sliced the air. "Mommy," he murmured, eyes locked on the floor. "Daddy has a lover." Emily froze, certain she'd misheard. "What was that, bud?" "That Daddy has a lover. He called her last night thinking I was asleep. He was downstairs and told her once you're on that trip they'll hit the accounts. Do something with all the money." Ice shot down Emily's spine. She swallowed hard. "What exactly did you hear?" "He said you'd be gone, giving them a few days to finish everything." She laughed and said they'd finally live without worries. Emily pulled him close without a word, her pulse hammering. A single whisper from her son had just shattered the night. He fell asleep fast. Emily didn't close her eyes once. Did you like the story? Which city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments so we can connect. If this one hit hard, a super thanks keeps more intense life stories coming. Your support means everything. I can't wait to read your thoughts. 2 brand new stories are popping up on screen right now. Highly recommend them. Tons more on the channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one, with love and gratitude. That afternoon, with her husband out running errands, Emily decided to reach out for some perspective. She dialed her sister Karen Hayes, someone who always cut through the noise with straightforward advice. Karen picked up on the second ring, her voice steady and familiar from their weekly check-ins. Emily laid out the basics without diving too deep yet, mentioning the odd conversation from the night before, and how it left her unsettled. Karen listened quietly at first, then jumped in with questions that sharpened the edges of Emily's thoughts. She suggested digging into any recent changes in shared documents, something Emily hadn't fully considered amid the initial shock. Emily shifted her focus back to the laptop, pulling up more files from the cloud storage they both used for household admin. She sifted through folders labeled for taxes and insurance, spotting one marked as updates from months ago. Inside were the scans of forms her husband had prepared right after her knee procedure, when she was still foggy from pain meds and recovery. The language in them now stood out stark and deliberate, clauses granting wide control over joint decisions. One page outlined authority to manage bank transfers without joint sign-off, phrased as a safeguard for emergencies. Another detailed property oversight in case of prolonged absence or health issues, which tied directly to her upcoming conference schedule. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she cross-referenced the dates, noting how they aligned with a period when her husband had been unusually attentive, handling all the paperwork himself. She recalled him explaining it as simple routine, nothing to worry over while she healed. But reading it fresh, the implications unfolded like a calculated setup, allowing access to accounts she primarily funded through her firm. Emily copied the key sections into a new document, highlighting terms that could enable unilateral moves on their savings or even the house title they held together. Karen's voice came back through the speaker after Emily shared screenshots via text. She pointed out potential red flags in the fine print, like clauses for asset reallocation under certain conditions. Karen urged her to consult someone professional before jumping to conclusions, but her tone carried an undercurrent of concern that mirrored Emily's growing unease. They talked through patterns Emily had overlooked, such as her husband's recent habit of extending work hours into evenings, claiming project deadlines that never seemed to end. Karen recalled a family gathering where he mentioned networking with new contacts in real estate, brushing it off as career expansion. Emily paced the living room as they spoke, her mind piecing together small discrepancies like unexplained charges on statements she rarely checked. Karen suggested starting with a discreet review of their online banking logs, something Emily could do without alerting anyone. Logging in, Emily scanned recent activity, noticing transfers to unfamiliar vendors that her husband had labeled as routine expenses. One stood out as a consultation fee to a legal service, dated just before the forms were signed. It wasn't large, but the timing raised questions about premeditation. Karen shifted the conversation to practical steps, recommending a friend in family law who could offer initial guidance off the record. Emily jotted down the contact details, feeling a slight lift from having an ally in the loop. They discussed how to approach the situation without escalating too soon, emphasizing the need to gather facts quietly. Karen shared a story from her own circle about a similar issue resolved through early intervention, which helped Emily frame her next moves. By the end of the call, Emily had a short list. Verify the form's validity, monitor any upcoming communications, and schedule that informal consult. Alone again, Emily opened her work email to maintain some normalcy, but her focus kept drifting back to the documents. She searched for templates online that matched the ones she'd signed, confirming they were standard, but often used in more complex scenarios than simple insurance tweaks. One article she skimmed warned about risks in granting such powers without full awareness, especially in shared finances. It echoed Karen's advice, pushing Emily to act sooner rather than later. She closed the browser and stood by the window, considering the broader picture. Her marketing role demanded strategy and foresight, skills she now turned inward to navigate this personal crisis. Emily drafted a quick email to the law contact Karen provided, keeping it vague but urgent for a meeting. Sending it felt like the first concrete step, shifting her from reaction to proactive control. She then reviewed their joint calendar, noting her husband's blocked times for meetings that overlapped with evenings he'd spent away. As she prepared a light lunch, thoughts circled around protecting what mattered most, including the stability she'd built for her son through years of building her business. Emily reflected on how her remote setup allowed flexibility, but it also meant relying on shared systems that now seemed vulnerable. She made a mental note to separate key accounts if things escalated, a precaution Karen had hinted at during their talk. The conversation with Karen lingered as Emily tidied up, reinforcing the value of outside input. It wasn't just about the forms anymore. It was about reclaiming oversight in areas she'd trusted blindly. Emily saved her notes in a private folder, password protected for now, and glanced at the clock, knowing her son would be home soon from classes. She resolved to keep things light around him, avoiding any hint of the undercurrents she'd uncovered. Stepping into the kitchen for a fresh cup of tea, Emily replayed Karen's words about watching for patterns in behavior. She pulled up old messages on her phone, scanning exchanges with her husband that now read differently, laced with excuses for late returns. One thread mentioned a new collaborator in property dealings, which tied back to those extended hours. It wasn't proof, but it built a narrative that demanded attention. Emily set her phone down and organized her thoughts into a plan. Contact the expert, audit more records, and observe without confrontation. Karen's support had grounded her, turning raw suspicion into structured response. As the day wore on, Emily felt equipped to face whatever layers this situation held, drawing on the same resilience that fueled her career success. Following Karen's recommendation, Emily arranged a quick meeting with Sarah Patel. Sarah, an old college friend now specializing in family law, welcomed her into the modest office space filled with stacked case files and a view of bustling downtown streets. They settled into chairs across a cluttered desk, where Emily spread out the printed documents for review. Sarah scanned each page methodically, her expression tightening as she noted the expansive permissions granted. She explained how such authorizations could allow sweeping control over financial matters, potentially enabling transfers or sales without further consent. Emily absorbed the breakdown, realizing the setup positioned her as vulnerable during any extended absence like the planned conference. Sarah delved into potential vulnerabilities, highlighting how medical recovery periods often led to overlooked details in signatures. She advised on immediate revocation processes through notarized filings to nullify the current setup. Emily nodded along, jotting key points about required forms and timelines for submission. They discussed banking safeguards next, with Sarah suggesting alerts for unusual activity on joint holdings. Emily shared concerns about intertwined assets from her marketing ventures, prompting Sarah to outline separation strategies that maintain stability without immediate disruption. The conversation turned to evidence gathering, where Sarah emphasized documenting patterns to build a stronger position if disputes arose. Sarah pulled up sample cases on her computer, illustrating outcomes where similar documents had been challenged successfully. Emily felt a surge of clarity as they compared notes, seeing parallels in how oversight lapses allowed exploitation. Sarah stressed the importance of discretion to avoid tipping off any involved parties prematurely. They brainstormed low-key monitoring techniques, like reviewing shared digital logs without altering them. Emily mentioned her firm's reliance on secure cloud systems, which Sarah praised as a potential advantage for tracking changes. By midway through, Emily had a clearer grasp on legal recourse options, including petitions for account freezes if needed. As the discussion wrapped, Sarah handed over templates for affidavits to formalize any revocations. Emily tucked them away, grateful for the practical tools that shifted her mindset toward action. Sarah offered ongoing support, promising to connect with specialists for more complex elements. Emily left the building with renewed focus, her steps purposeful amid the afternoon crowd. Back at home, Ryan walked in from his afternoon lecture, backpack slung over one shoulder and a subdued look on his face. He dropped his things in the entryway and joined Emily in the kitchen, where she was prepping snacks. Ryan hesitated before speaking up about something weighing on him from recent overhearings. He described catching fragments of a conversation where his father outlined future arrangements involving the college savings fund. According to Ryan, his father portrayed it as a way to ensure better management, hinting at reallocating portions for immediate needs. Emily listened intently as Ryan detailed the assurances given, like promises of enhanced opportunities tied to new living setups. It struck Emily how the talk framed her role as secondary, suggesting her busy schedule left gaps in oversight. Ryan expressed frustration over the implications, worried it undermined the efforts she'd put into building that fund through client bonuses and careful budgeting. Emily reassured him briefly, emphasizing her commitment to his education path regardless of any shifts. Ryan elaborated on the tone of the exchange, noting how it positioned the changes as beneficial upgrades. He mentioned specifics about potential investments or relocations that could impact his upcoming applications. Emily probed gently for more context, learning that the discussion touched on partnerships with external advisors for fund handling. It painted a picture of premeditated adjustments that bypassed her input entirely. Ryan's account added layers to Emily's suspicions, linking financial maneuvers to broader lifestyle alterations. The revelation fueled Emily's determination to scrutinize further. She accessed their shared calendar app on her tablet, searching for any entries that might correlate with the described plans. Buried in her husband's private notes section was a reminder for a consultation with Dr. Elena Vargas, flagged as routine but including details on capacity evaluations. Emily cross-checked the name online briefly, confirming Dr. Vargas's expertise in assessments for legal declarations of fitness. The entry included preparatory steps like document submissions, which aligned suspiciously with the earlier forms. Emily pieced together how such an appointment could serve as a tool to question her decision-making abilities, especially timed around her supposed travel. She saved screenshots of the calendar details, adding them to her growing collection of observations. Ryan watched her work, offering insights from his own tech-savvy perspective on tracing digital trails. He suggested checking email forwards or shared drives for related correspondences. Emily appreciated his input, seeing it as a collaborative effort that strengthened her resolve. Together they reviewed a few archived messages, uncovering references to advisory services that matched Dr. Vargas's clinic. Emily noted the professional tone in those exchanges, masking underlying intentions. Ryan pointed out inconsistencies in dates that overlapped with family events she'd missed due to work. It highlighted a pattern of exclusion that now appeared deliberate. Emily filed away the findings, planning to incorporate them into her next legal steps. Ryan's involvement brought a sense of unity, reminding her of the stakes beyond finances. As Emily organized the new information, she reflected on how Ryan's future hinged on maintaining control over those resources. His concerns about scholarships and program costs amplified the urgency. She drafted a message to Sarah, summarizing the latest discoveries, attaching the calendar captures for review. The process solidified Emily's strategy, turning isolated facts into a cohesive narrative. Ryan stepped away to handle homework, leaving Emily to contemplate the interconnected risks now evident. The details from Dr. Vargas's involvement underscored the need for swift countermeasures. Emily researched basic protocols for such evaluations, understanding their role in disputes over authority. It equipped her with questions to pose in follow-up consultations. She bookmarked resources on protective filings, aligning them with Sarah's earlier advice. The emerging picture motivated Emily to prioritize consultations that addressed both immediate threats and long-term safeguards. Emily connected with Michael Reynolds through a secure video link. Michael, a seasoned attorney focused on domestic disputes and asset protection, appeared on screen with a professional backdrop of law books and a neutral expression. He greeted her warmly yet efficiently, diving straight into the materials she'd forwarded earlier. Michael dissected the authorization clauses one by one, pointing out how they extended beyond typical safeguards into realms of unrestricted decision-making. He warned that such provisions could facilitate property dispositions or fund reallocations under pretexts like temporary unavailability, especially during out-of-town commitments. Michael elaborated on exposure levels, noting that intertwined professional earnings from her marketing operations amplified the hazards. He recommended initiating countermeasures through certified declarations to invalidate the existing grants. Emily followed his explanations closely, absorbing details on jurisdictional requirements for overrides. They covered contingency options for securing digital accesses, with Michael advising on multi-factor setups to prevent unauthorized entries. Emily raised points about interconnected business tools, leading Michael to suggest compartmentalizing them from personal ones as a defensive layer. During the session, Michael displayed annotated versions of similar cases he'd handled, demonstrating reversals achieved via timely interventions. Emily gained insight into procedural timelines, recognizing the value in preempting any activations. Michael underscored the necessity of maintaining operational normalcy to gather untainted observations. They explored tracking methodologies compliant with privacy standards, such as noting discrepancies in device usages without invasive measures. Emily appreciated his emphasis on ethical boundaries, aligning with her intent to resolve matters cleanly. Michael provided customized forms for preliminary filings, which Emily downloaded immediately for review. She expressed appreciation for his direct approach, feeling empowered by the structured pathway he outlined. Michael committed to facilitating connections with banking liaisons for enhanced monitoring. Emily ended the call with a firmer understanding of her standing, ready to implement the discussed protocols. Outside the virtual space, she coordinated with Karen to put one element into motion discreetly. Emily and Karen positioned themselves in a nondescript vehicle near David's workplace, blending into the surrounding traffic. Karen handled navigation while Emily monitored entrances through binoculars borrowed from a friend. They observed David's routine departure, noting his path toward a nearby commercial district. Karen suggested trailing at a safe distance to avoid detection, allowing Emily to capture license plates of vehicles in proximity. As David entered a mid-rise building, they parked across the street, using public vantage points to watch lobby movements. Karen pointed out familiar patterns in David's demeanor, like hurried strides that differed from his usual composure. Emily documented timestamps on her phone app, correlating them with known schedules. They spotted him meeting a woman at a cafe adjacent to the structure, exchanging folders in a casual manner. Karen whispered observations about body language, noting gestures indicative of familiarity beyond professional ties. Emily snapped discreet photos from afar, focusing on exchanges without zooming intrusively. The pair followed as David and the woman relocated to a quieter spot, where Emily identified subtle indicators of coordination. Karen recalled similar setups from her own experiences in oversight roles, helping Emily interpret the interactions. They maintained distance while trailing back toward familiar routes, gathering visual cues on affiliations. Emily noted the woman's confident posture, linking it to potential involvement in specialized fields. Karen drove smoothly, ensuring their presence remained unnoticed throughout the excursion. Back in a secure location, Emily reviewed the captured images, identifying the woman as linked to realty services through quick profile checks. Karen assisted in cross-referencing details, uncovering ties to advisory networks. Emily prepared her device for audio capture, setting it to high sensitivity for ambient recordings. They positioned near a spot David frequented for evening calls, blending into the environment seamlessly. Emily activated the recorder as David appeared, engaging in a phone discussion that carried faintly. The device picked up phrases about impending opportunities and coordinated efforts. Karen signaled adjustments for clearer reception, allowing Emily to secure segments without interference. The conversation revealed references to streamlined processes and mutual benefits, laced with undertones of anticipation. Emily saved the files immediately, labeling them for later analysis. Karen reviewed the initial playback with Emily, noting key inflections that suggested deeper alliances. They discussed how the content aligned with broader concerns, without speculating excessively. Emily transferred the data to encrypted storage, planning to share with Michael for evaluation. Karen offered perspectives on contextual nuances, enhancing Emily's interpretation of the exchanges. The recording captured mentions of collaborative ventures, implying shared objectives in resource management. Emily isolated specific utterances, recognizing patterns in terminology that echoed legal frameworks. Karen helped transcribe highlights, ensuring accuracy in documentation. Emily felt the weight of tangible support, bolstering her approach to forthcoming challenges. As they wrapped the session, Emily organized the new materials into folders, prioritizing them for professional input. Karen's involvement provided a balanced viewpoint, grounding Emily's strategies in practicality. The gathered audio stood as a pivotal element, ready for integration into protective measures. Emily proceeded with the account adjustments under Michael's guidance. She accessed the primary banking portal from a private session, initiating transfers to newly created individual holdings secured by biometric verification. Michael coached her via text on routing larger sums from joint ventures, ensuring compliance with transfer limits to avoid flags. Emily executed the moves in batches, reallocating business revenues first to maintain cash flow for her marketing contracts. She then isolated retirement contributions, layering them with additional authentication layers. Michael sent verification codes for each step, confirming the shifts rendered previous accesses obsolete. Emily documented every transaction screenshot, timestamping for audit trails. She turned to the education fund next, a dedicated account built from her promotions and bonuses over years. With Ryan's future in mind, she removed co-designations, funneling it into a trust administered solely by her. The process involved endorsing beneficiary updates, prioritizing irrevocable protections against external claims. As safeguards locked in, Emily received confirmations from the institution, solidifying the barriers. She extended similar measures to investment portfolios tied to her firm, diversifying holdings across platforms with ironclad privacy settings. Michael's follow-up outlined monitoring dashboards for anomaly alerts, which Emily set up promptly. The completion brought a measure of security, transforming vulnerability into fortified independence. Ryan approached her later that evening, carrying a notebook from his studies. He sat down and recounted a recent interaction with his father that had stuck with him. David had outlined visions of a different household dynamic, including relocation to a space shared with Laura Jenkins. Ryan described promises of independence, like dedicated workspaces, and shared activities tailored to his interests. The narrative positioned it as an upgrade, with assurances of stability amid Emily's demanding schedule. Emily listened as Ryan conveyed the subtle pressures embedded in the talk, suggesting her absences created gaps best filled elsewhere. He highlighted commitments to extracurricular support and networking events, framed as enhancements unavailable under current arrangements. Ryan admitted the appeal tugged at him initially, but doubts surfaced over long-term implications. Emily acknowledged his candor, reinforcing that choices remained collaborative. The details Ryan shared illuminated intentions to reshape family structures fundamentally. Emily noted how the proposals intertwined with financial reallocations, aiming to sever ties incrementally. Ryan mentioned specific incentives like upgraded tech setups, which echoed broader enticements. Emily committed to transparency in decisions affecting him, easing his visible tension. Karen arrived shortly after, drawn by Emily's update on the fund protections. She suggested a casual check-in with David to gauge reactions without confrontation. They drove to a neutral park where David had agreed to meet for a routine handoff. Karen observed from afar as Emily engaged David briefly, probing about recent discussions with Ryan. David responded with vague affirmations of support, deflecting deeper inquiries. Karen joined midway, her presence shifting the tone to familial. She raised light questions about upcoming plans, noting David's evasive replies on logistics. Emily pressed gently on commitment assurances, watching for inconsistencies. David maintained composure, attributing details to positive changes. Karen countered with observations on communication gaps, prompting David to assure ongoing involvement. The exchange revealed hesitations in David's explanations, particularly around timelines. Emily documented mental notes on phrasing that aligned with overheard elements. Karen wrapped the conversation politely, extracting concessions for more open dialogues. David departed with nods, unaware of the subtle probing. Back home, Emily debriefed with Karen on subtle cues, like David's quick glances at his phone. Karen analyzed the body language as guarded, suggesting underlying preparations. Emily integrated the insights into her records, cross-referencing with prior findings. Karen advocated for continued vigilance, offering to assist in future observations. Ryan overheard parts of the recap, adding his perspective on David's recent demeanor. He described shifts in tone during calls, hinting at divided loyalties. Emily appreciated the layered viewpoints, strengthening her overall assessment. Karen departed with plans for regular syncs, leaving Emily to consolidate the day's gains. Emily revisited the trust documents, verifying Ryan's designation as a primary beneficiary. She added riders for accelerated access upon milestones, safeguarding against disruptions. The fund now stood impregnable, a testament to proactive stewardship. Emily emailed Michael the updates, receiving prompt approval on the configurations. Reflections on Ryan's account underscored the personal stakes, motivating Emily to explore supplemental coverage options. She enrolled in advisory services for youth planning, ensuring comprehensive buffers. Karen texted encouragement, reinforcing the network of support. David's responses during the meet lingered, revealing cracks in assurances. Emily prepared contingency outlines, prioritizing Ryan's input in executions. The protections extended to communication protocols, setting boundaries on unilateral narratives. As Emily archived the session logs, she felt alignment across efforts. Ryan's trust in sharing fortified her path forward. With the financial layers sealed, Emily turned attention to simulating her departure. From the safe location arranged through contacts, Emily orchestrated the pretense of departure. She loaded an empty suitcase into her car's trunk, starting the engine with the navigation directed toward the airport. Emily drove a short distance before pulling into the concealed spot, ensuring no tails followed. Inside the modest setup, equipped with monitoring gear, she connected to the feeds Michael had established, Screens displayed live views from strategic points, including the bank entrance and interior counters. Emily adjusted angles for optimal coverage, confirming audio links functioned without glitches. Michael joined via remote access, verifying system integrity before they settled in to observe. Emily maintained composure, sipping water while scanning displays for initial movements. The plan hinged on David attempting the transactions, exposing vulnerabilities in real time. She double-checked her phone for scripted messages, ready to ignore incoming queries as part of the facade. Michael outlined expected sequences based on prior patterns, preparing Emily for variations in behavior. As activity picked up on the feeds, David appeared at the bank threshold dressed in business attire, carrying a slim briefcase. He strode toward the service desk, presenting credentials with practiced ease. Emily leaned closer to the monitor, noting his confident posture that masked underlying tension. The camera captured his interaction with the clerk, who accepted the submitted forms and began verification. Michael's commentary highlighted procedural steps, anticipating the moment of denial. The clerk's expression shifted upon system checks, prompting a call to a supervisor. David crossed arms, tapping fingers subtly as weight extended. Emily observed the build-up, her focus sharp on every gesture. The supervisor arrived, reviewing the materials before delivering the update on revoked statuses. David's reaction unfolded visibly, from surprise to insistence that errors must exist. He argued points about prior validations, voice rising slightly in frustration. Laura emerged from a parked vehicle outside, approaching the doors with hurried steps. She entered the lobby, joining David at the counter amid escalating exchanges. Emily watched their dynamic play out, Laura gesturing emphatically while David shook his head. The clerk maintained protocol, reiterating access denials rooted in updated directives. Security personnel moved closer as tones heightened, ready to intervene if needed. Michael captured the sequence in high resolution, annotating timestamps for evidentiary purposes. Emily noted Laura's attempts to interject, pushing alternative interpretations of the documents. The supervisor firmly restated policies, blocking any overrides. David's persistence waned into visible defeat, shoulders slumping as reality settled. Laura pulled him aside, their whispered debate caught partially on audio feeds. The pair exited the building, continuing their discussion in the parking area. Emily zoomed on their expressions, capturing animated gestures and pointed fingers. Laura paced while David leaned against the car, rubbing temples in evident dismay. Michael isolated clips of the confrontation, ensuring clear documentation of admissions slipped during the heat. Emily felt a quiet vindication as the footage revealed cracks in their composure. Security escorted them fully off premises after a final exchange with staff. Laura drove away first, David following in his vehicle with a distracted air. Emily replayed segments, analyzing nuances in their coordination breakdown. Michael compiled the visuals into a cohesive package, integrating audio overlays for completeness. The material showcased deliberate attempts thwarted by preemptive measures. Emily coordinated with Michael on next integrations, weaving the bank events into broader narratives. The videos highlighted premeditated efforts, strengthening positions for formal proceedings. Michael praised the clarity achieved through the setup, crediting Emily's foresight in deployment. She reviewed the compiled files, satisfied with the unassailable record now at hand. The episode underscored the effectiveness of layered defenses, turning potential losses into demonstrable gains. Emily archived duplicates securely, preparing for escalation reviews. Michael's expertise ensured the captures met standards for admissibility. The day's outcomes fortified Emily's stance, transforming observations into actionable leverage. As compilations finalized, Emily contemplated the ripple effects on upcoming confrontations. The footage stood ready for deployment, marking a pivotal shift in control. Armed with the evidence, Emily initiated the confrontation phase. She answered an incoming call from an unrecognized number, recognizing David's voice on the line. Emily kept her responses measured, prompting him to elaborate on recent events without revealing her hand. David shifted between defensiveness and pleas, admitting partial motivations tied to perceived inequities in their dynamic. Emily guided the exchange toward specifics, eliciting acknowledgments of coordinated efforts with Laura. He referenced frustrations over her career dominance, framing his actions as attempts to rebalance control. Emily noted his slips into justifications for asset shifts, capturing the audio for documentation. David's tone escalated as Emily pressed on intentions behind the forms, leading to concessions about leveraging her recovery state. She maintained silence during key admissions, allowing him to fill voids with details on planned reallocations. The call exposed layers of resentment, with David alluding to external advice that shaped his approach. Emily ended the interaction abruptly after securing enough incriminating elements, forwarding the recording to Michael immediately. He confirmed its value in establishing intent, integrating it into the complaint draft. Emily proceeded to formalize the filing at the appropriate judicial office, submitting comprehensive packets, including affidavits and supporting media. Clerks processed the intake efficiently, stamping receipts for her records. Michael accompanied her, ensuring all sections addressed fraud elements and protective requests. The submission targeted breaches in fiduciary duties, highlighting manipulative tactics uncovered through diligence. Emily reviewed the cover letter outlining claims, satisfied with its precision in detailing orchestrated deceptions. The case advanced to an initial review, where Emily presented alongside Michael before a presiding official. Arguments centered on patterns of deceit, backed by sequenced proofs demonstrating premeditation. The official examined submissions closely, questioning aspects of the revocation's timing. Michael countered with legal precedents affirming swift protections against exploitation. Emily contributed clarifications on personal impacts, emphasizing safeguards' necessity for ongoing stability. Opposing representation for David and Laura entered objections, disputing interpretations of the documents as benign. Michael dismantled their positions through cross-references to captured interactions. The hearing progressed with examinations of financial logs, showing attempted probes post-revocation. Emily observed the officials' nods during key expositions, sensing momentum building. Requests for temporary restraints gained traction, justified by risks of further interference. The official issued directives limiting contacts, mandating distances from shared properties and communications. Emily received copies outlining enforcement mechanisms, including monitoring provisions. The orders extended to Laura, curtailing involvements in related affairs. Michael explained compliance expectations, preparing Emily for potential violations. She absorbed the implications, viewing the measures as essential barriers against escalations. Investigative follow-ups ensued, with authorities delving into employment records tied to the allegations. Scrutiny revealed discrepancies in David's professional conduct, prompting internal audits at his firm. Reports surfaced on policy breaches involving confidential data handling, linked indirectly to the schemes. Emily learned of the ripple effects through updates from Michael, noting how the inquiries pressured accountability. David's position eroded as reviews uncovered overlaps between personal pursuits and work resources. His superiors initiated suspensions pending resolutions, citing ethical lapses. Emily remained detached from direct notifications, relying on official channels for confirmations. The developments aligned with Michael's predictions on cascading consequences from exposed behaviors. Laura faced parallel examinations in her professional sphere, with associations questioning her roles and advisory capacities. Emily noted the broader fallout, as networks distanced from implicated parties. Michael compiled status reports, illustrating how the filings triggered systemic responses. Emily focused on maintaining her routines, drawing strength from the unfolding validations. The restraints provided immediate relief, enabling Emily to prioritize core responsibilities without looming threats. Michael's guidance ensured adherence to procedural next steps, fortifying her position. The session's outcomes marked a definitive pivot, transforming vulnerabilities into enforced protections. Emily reflected on the progression as documents circulated among involved entities. The measures disrupted prior trajectories, imposing tangible restrictions on movements. She archived correspondence detailing the orders, ready for enforcement if breached. The phase concluded with solidified boundaries, underscoring the efficacy of compiled proofs. Years later, Emily Thompson sat on the back porch of the smaller, sun-filled house she had bought outright with her own earnings. Ryan, now 22 and home for the weekend from his full-ride scholarship at Northwestern, sprawled in the chair beside her, laughing at something on his phone. She watched him for a moment, then spoke quietly. "Bud, do you remember the night you whispered to me about Dad?" Ryan's smile faded, but he nodded. "Hard to forget. I thought you'd be mad at me for spying." "I was never mad at you," Emily said. "You saved us. You saved me. And I want every woman watching this to hear exactly what I learned, so they never have to feel as powerless as I did that night." She turned toward the camera she had set up for this final message. "First, trust your children. They see and hear more than we think." Ryan didn't understand every detail, but he knew something was wrong, and he trusted me enough to speak up. That single act of courage changed everything. Second, never sign anything when you're sick, tired, or medicated without a second pair of eyes. Those routine updates I signed after surgery gave my husband total control over my money, my house, and even my medical decisions. One signature, given when I was vulnerable, almost cost me my son and my future. Third, you do not need to wait for proof to protect yourself. The moment your gut screams, act, revoke powers of attorney, separate accounts, change passwords, gather evidence quietly. I did all of that before I ever confronted him, and that's why I walked away with everything that was mine, and everything that belonged to my son. Fourth, betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the person who once promised to love and protect you. When someone shows you they're willing to steal from you and from your child, believe them the first time. And last, you are stronger than you know. I was a 42-year-old woman who thought her marriage was safe, her finances were secure, and her family was solid. In 1 week, I discovered none of that was true. And in the months that followed, I rebuilt everything. Stronger, smarter, and completely on my terms. Emily reached over and squeezed Ryan's hand. "I lost a husband, but I never lost my son. I lost the illusion of a perfect life, but I gained the real one, this one, right here. And I gained the knowledge that no one gets to take my voice, my money, or my child from me without a fight." She looked straight into the lens, calm and unshakable. So if you're watching this and something feels off, if a signature felt too easy, if a promise sounds too good, if your child looks scared when certain names are mentioned, stop everything and protect yourself right now. You deserve to keep what you've worked for. You deserve to keep your children safe. And you are absolutely capable of doing both. Emily smiled, the kind of smile that comes after the storm has passed and the sun finally breaks through. "I'm living proof." Ryan leaned his head on her shoulder, the same way he did when he was 18 and terrified. This time, they were both at peace. And that, more than any court order, more than any bank balance, was the real victory.